All right, Brent Porcio here with Luke O'Hara. Do I have your permission to use this video in my class?
Yes.
So we're going to be using the overhead squat as an assessment tool. It's a great assessment tool because it'll tell us a lot of the functions of the body because there's a lot of moving parts here. It's not the end-all be-all. It still isn't addressing some specific ranges, but it covers a lot. And I like to start off first instructing the overhead squat. So something in a wider grip outside your shoulders. I want your arms above your head. I want your arms extended straight up. I want you to just naturally squat. Go over where you're comfortable. See how deep you can squat. Come back up. So you can see his heels are coming up. He's not getting full depth. The butt's not going lower than the glutes. So to determine if this is a dysfunctional issue in the movement or the joint movements, or is this a coaching, like a motor control issue, I might give some cues to see if you can get some more depth. So like we said, let's try to, let's maybe bring your feet in a little bit more shoulder width. Don't let the knees go in. See if we can keep them out a little bit. See if we can keep the trunk vertical. Let the knees go forward to keep your trunk vertical, not pushing your butt back, and see if you can get more depth in your squat. Okay, so he's really challenged when he gets to about knee height with the glute, and it looks like dorsiflexion issues. I've actually measured his dorsiflexion. I know he's somewhere 5 to 10 degrees, which is on the low end. And I think he had a specific more restriction in the right side. And so typically if we can't get full dorsiflexion, our knees stop moving forward, the butt starts going back, and then we start doing the trunk, and then we're going to kill our depth that way. So that is a dorsiflexion issue. The other thing guys will do with dorsiflexion issues, they'll flare the feet out really far to get away from the dorsiflexion by going more valgus with the knees. The other issue too is if the knees are coming inward, then the femur is going to hit the hip bone earlier, and that's going to limit depth. And why is that happening? Once again, that could be in connection to the poor dorsiflexion, or it could be tight adductors. A lot of times we work with pitchers use a lot of adduction. They could have tight adductors and they're stabilizing here, and they don't want to stabilize in the external rotators. And sometimes too, maybe the external rotators are weak or they're not active. If they're not in a good posture, neutral hip position, if they're in a posterior tilt, sometimes they're turning off their core, turning off their external rotators, and then their knees want to go in as well. So it could be hip related, could be ankle related, that we're seeing the valgus positions. So we got to teach them or strengthen their external rotators, teach them to fire their external rotators in their squats, try to translate the knees with the toes, keeping the heels down and trying to get as much dorsiflexion as we can. So heavy on dorsiflexion with the overhead squat. Like you really have to have a lot of range to get some good depth. And the other thing was squat again. Like we can look and see if he's going to one side or the other. So go all the way down. Okay, it's better. I had him squat before and I saw a little shift to the left side. So if we have, you can relax there, if we have less range on one side, say in dorsiflexion the other side, that could cause us to want to go where there's more range. We could shift, you could have some injury in the hip, you could have weak adductors on one side. The other thing is in the spine. If the spine is curving, then we're in that posterior pelvic tilt. If we're in an anterior pelvic tilt, sometimes the knees want to translate too far forward. The other issues is once we get past that is getting into the shoulders. So the guys, you were having a little hard time with that, go over the head with the shoulders, you don't have to squat, just extend out. So he can't get full extension in his elbow, even there. So does that come into, which feels like he doesn't have a lot of upward rotation. So if I don't have a lot of upward rotation, the humerus is stuck, so the arm is trying to bend to get the higher position. You can relax. Also too, a lot of times in pitchers, when they have less degrees of extension of the arm, could be the bicep is over tight, which typically happens because it's a deceleration of the forearm and the triceps get weak. But it looks like it was both on both sides, so I think it's related to his scaps not upwardly rotating. So that could be a serratus anterior weakness or inactivity. That could be tight rhomboids, that could be weak lower traps, weak levator scaps to help pull the blades up to give the humerus room to extend up, and then it gives a better place for where the arms aren't having to bend to get to that vertical position. They can go and get extended. So, and also too, they're not retracting well. So sometimes, like go overhead again, if the arms, the side's going up, if the arms are going forward, so sometimes a guy will get fully extended, but he'll be here, that's as far back as he can go, off the line of his back, then that could be retraction still within the similar muscles, lower traps, rhomboids, being able to create that stability with the blades back. I think that's pretty much hit it all. So we can really address dysfunction with an overhead squat from every joint. Problem is like we're not hitting hip extension in this, so we can't really see how the hips can extend. We're hitting some flexion, and that was probably another thing I missed too. If you have the hips tipping under at the bottom of the squat or butt winking, that's because the hamstrings are running out of range or they're too tight. So we're seeing how much hip flexion. You have to have good hip flexion to get down there, but like I said, we're not able to get a lot of hip extension. We're not getting a lot of horizontal abduction here, but pretty much at most everything. So it's a really good assessment tool for understanding function or dysfunction through the whole body. Cool.